What's up, Packer fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Appreciate you being here today. We are inching closer and closer to the NFL draft, and in doing so, today we're going to be breaking down Peter Skoronski, the great offensive lineman for Northwestern. Can't wait to tell you all about him. But before we get there, and as we inch closer to the NFL draft, it is so incredibly important that on that first Thursday, we are all the first to know. We're going to want to know the first pick, the first Packers selection. We're going to want to know all the details. And the best way to do that is to make sure that we have a reliable wireless service. And that is why I am so incredibly excited to announce that we have proudly partnered with Mint Mobile for today's show. If you're sick of paying too much money for unreliable wireless phone service, then let me tell you about Mint Mobile. You've probably heard of Mint Mobile from Ryan Reynolds, who is one of the owners of Mint. But if you haven't heard of Mint Mobile, then let me break it all down for you, just like I would one of the top prospects in this year's draft. Mint offers premium wireless service for as low as $15 per month. And the amazing thing is that you don't need to sacrifice coverage, speed, or data. Mint is built on the nation's largest 5G network, and they're able to keep costs low because they sell direct to you online, cutting out retail stores. Do you really think you still need to pay for the nation's largest 5G network? Let me let you in on a little secret. Prior to Pack a Day, I worked in the wireless industry for over a decade, and the wireless networks utilize all the same networks and towers. There's no reason that you have to pay a ton of money for amazing wireless service in 2023. I love using Mint because they've figured out the system. You get the nation's largest 5G network at a fraction of the cost that you'd have to pay through those other providers. It's as much of a no-brainer as staying away from running backs and tight ends in the first round of this year's draft. And the absolute best part is that switching is ridiculously easy. Thanks to their digital eSIM cards, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. Even if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge, and you can do everything in 15 minutes with Mint's incredible customer support team. So what are you waiting for? Get switched to the fastest 5G network that is a fraction of the cost. Go to mintmobile.com/Andy Herman to get started. You can also find the link in the video description below. And if you've already made the switch, please let me know in the comments below. I appreciate Mint Mobile a ton for partnering with me today on this episode. And like I said, if you haven't had the chance and opportunity yet to check out Mint Mobile, you are definitely going to want to do so. That being said, we're going to jump right into Peter Skoronski. As I mentioned, a prospect that I cannot wait to break down with you. He is a 6'4", 313-pound offensive lineman, a junior out of Northwestern. He is only 21 years old. He will turn 22 years old in July. He has a 9.31 RAS score at offensive tackle, and he's got a 9.90 RAS score at guard. He did not do the short shuttle, but did all the rest of the testing. So even at tackle, he's an elite athlete. At guard, he's an extremely elite athlete in the 99th percentile overall. Let's break down that athletic testing first at tackle, and then we'll go to guard. At tackle, he tested in the 11th percentile for height, and the 63rd percentile for weight, and the 92nd percentile for the bench press, 98th percentile for vert, 97th percentile for the broad jump, 76th percentile in the 40, 97th percentile in the 10-yard split on that 40-yard dash, and then 59th percentile in the 3-cone. Those were all of his testing, or same testing, but that's how he tested in comparison to the rest of the offensive tackles. At guard, if you put him at guard, he tested in the 63rd percentile for height, 65th percentile for weight, 87th percentile in the bench press, 99th percentile in vert, 98th percentile in broad jump, 83rd percentile in the 40-yard dash, 97th percentile in the 10-yard split, and 69th percentile in the 3-cone. As far as his productivity goes, these are per PFF, but in 2020, he had 348 pass block attempts with 17 pressures allowed, only 2 sacks, and 0 penalties. Next year, he came back in 2021, 436 pass block attempts, 20 pressures allowed, only 2 sacks, and 3 penalties. And then this past year, 474 pass block attempts, only 6 pressures. Only 6 pressures in 474 pass block attempts, only 1 sack allowed. He did have his most penalties, but still only with 5. An incredible season put together from a pass blocking standpoint. Overall, he's had 2,382 snaps in his 3-year career, almost entirely at left tackle. Now, from a grading standpoint, per PFF, in 2020, he had 672 snaps with an 81.4 grade. In 2021, he had 828 snaps with an 83.8 grade. And in 2022, he had 882 snaps with an 89.5 grade. So he came in right away, 2020, 81.4 grade, starter at left tackle, 672 snaps. And every year, he played more snaps and he got better, 81.4 to 83.8 to 89.5. And the best part is that he graded out extremely well in pass protection and he graded out extremely well as a run blocker as well. So he has been a extremely well-rounded player through his 3-year career at Northwestern in the Big Ten. Let's go over his positives like we always do for these players. First is that he has an incredibly quick first step. And what that allows him to do and what makes him so good, in my opinion, is his ability to make first contact and get to his spot before the defensive lineman or edge rusher gets to their spot. As I've talked about before, it's so incredibly important that you get to your spot, you get your hand engaged, and that you engage the defensive player before they get to their spot and they engage you. It's a lot of times a master of timing, and it's whoever gets their hands on you first is going to win. And Peter Skoronski does a phenomenal job of having a quick first step, getting out of his stance, getting to his spot, and then controlling the play from there on out, because he's just going to beat the defender to where they want to go, to where he wants to go, and he's going to do it quicker than that defender is able to do it. And that just sets him up for success. And it's something he has been doing over and over through his 3-year career at Northwestern. It's repeatable. It's something that's going to work at the NFL level. And it's something that, you can almost just set it and forget it at this point. He's so good at it. And getting to his spot is, like I said, one of his key superpowers as a player. I would also say that going into his first year, his rookie year in the NFL, he is going to be one of the more technically sound offensive linemen that you will find in the NFL as a rookie. And that goes back however many years. You just don't find this, many offensive linemen who have the technical skill set that Skoronski has and is going to have ready-made when he comes into the NFL. And we know how important that is, because in the NFL, we are seeing less and less practice time. We are seeing more scheme-related practices, making sure players are aware of the scheme and the checks and the audibles and all those things. And we are seeing less and less time on technique work and the ability to actually improve as a player. So the fact that Skoronski is going to come into the league so technically sound already, it's not to say he's perfect. It's not to say that he doesn't have things to work on. He absolutely does. But when you compare him to other rookies at the same position, he is far ahead of where most rookies will be when it comes to a technical standpoint. He may have legitimate 5-position versatility. He came into college as a center. He has played primarily at left tackle. Most think his best spot is going to be guard, and it would not shock me legitimately if he could play left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle in the NFL. I think he's that technically sound. I think he's that athletically gifted. And I think he's that good of an offensive lineman where you could literally, like Elton Jenkins-esque, just put him in and he's going to find a way to block the person in front of him. There are certain players, and Elton Jenkins is a great example of this, that it almost doesn't matter. You can just put him out there and say, hey, block the guy in front of you. And it doesn't matter if it's on the left side, the right side, tackle, guard, center. It doesn't matter if he has to make the calls, if he's the one snapping the ball. It's just like, all right, I got to go block the guy in front of me. No worries. I'm going to get that job done. And like I said, Elton is such a great example of that. I think Skoronski has a very similar skill set. It is so hard to find that. So hard to find somebody that has that versatility. Sometimes they maybe have left or right versatility. Maybe they've got left tackle, left guard, or right tackle, right guard, but legitimately think Skoronski could probably play all 5 positions and play all 5 pretty darn well. He has a fantastic football IQ. He understands angles. He understands how to get to the second level. He understands where he wants to get to. And like I said, with that first step and that athleticism, he's more often than not able to get to his spot faster than the defensive lineman. He has a great mix of size and quickness. Now, not ideal size for an offensive tackle. We'll talk about more on that in just a moment. But overall, if you look at how he is built, how he wins, and his athleticism and quickness, the overall total package is there. And that's why he tested so well at both guard and tackle when it comes to relative athletic score. He is extremely competitive, and he very much cares about the game. You can see his intensity, you can see his competitive nature, and you can see how much he cares when other players on his team does well. He has the perfect offensive lineman demeanor. He is setting other players up for success, and you can tell he takes great joy in doing that. He has very active hands. His hand placement can be a little bit better. That's something that he can work on at the NFL level. But overall, his hands stay active, and he's just constantly fighting and battling the player across from him, finding a way to win. And even when he doesn't have everything go in his favor, more often than not, he's still finding a way to win the rep and make it successful, or at least that he's not losing the rep. And maybe it's just a neutral rep. That's okay. That's going to happen. But he loses very rarely when it comes to, just facing defensive linemen, edge rushers, etc. at a competitive level. He wins the leverage battle more often than not. You see him get low. You see him win leverage. You see him win the pad level battle. That's when it all comes to being technically sound. And you see that with Skoronski over and over. And like I said, it is very repeatable for him. And if you're looking for one other positive, especially when it comes to a Packers standpoint, he is the grandson of former Packer Bob Skoronski. So you love the bloodlines there, and you love that he has some Packers heritage in his blood as well. As far as the negatives go, there's not a ton here. He does lack anchor, and he needs to be a bit more physical at the point of attack. If you were to say, sometimes we talk about, is he a power player? Is he going to be somebody that you want more in a power game, or is he more of a finesse player? I would say that Skoronski leans more on the finesse side, but it's not like he's not physical. It's not like he can't play with some power. It's not like he can't get players to the second level. I think all of those things are true, but where he struggles on the edge is with more of like a bull rush and his ability to anchor. He's going to need to put on some strength, whether he's at guard or tackle, in the lower body to make sure he can anchor a little bit better. And he needs to be a little bit more physical at the point of attack. I wouldn't say he's somebody that has like a nasty demeanor. He's just a very sound offensive lineman that gets the job done more often than not. And that's fine. You don't have to be, Richie Incognito or some, jerk offensive lineman to be successful. I know we all like that demeanor sometimes for our offensive linemen, but if you get the job done, whatever your demeanor is, it doesn't really matter all that much. Like Marco Rivera was one of the nicest guys in the league. He was a phenomenal guard year over year, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be something, but I do think he can be a little bit more physical at the point of attack. And speaking of which, I would not classify him as a mauler either. If you're looking for that guy that's just going to, maul players, throw him to the ground and be ultra physical, that's on him. And again, like I said, that's okay. That's not how you have to win. In fact, sometimes if you're just a lot of times that's for show. Like that's for I'm going to throw you to the ground. I'm going to pancake. Now, if you can throw a guy to the ground and pancake him, by all means, do that when you can. But sometimes people are just doing that, almost trying to do that for show. And it can actually cost them when on the reps where they don't get players to the ground and don't pancake them. So I'd rather have somebody be technically sound and just do a really good job at doing their job than be showy and be like, I'm going to throw this guy to the ground and pancake him. Like I said, it's not a bad thing, but, like I said, I just kind of prefer the technician side of things. He will be a little bit over aggressive, and he will overcommit at times. He'll try to get to the second level and maybe not, block his initial man the way that he should. Just some of those things will flash up on tape. But again, these are being super nitpicky for a guy that's very technically sound. And then last but not least is I think there is a real legitimate thought that, well, it's great he might have 5-position versatility. He probably is a guard and probably a left guard, and that's probably his best spot. Now, if he's just a really great left guard, who cares? There's so much value in that. However, if he ultimately just ends up being a left guard, the value diminishes a little bit. And like I said, even if he is, let's just say they pencil him in at left guard and that's where he's going to play, it doesn't mean he can't kick to center or tackle or right guard or wherever they need him in a pinch. But it ultimately does potentially diminish his value a little bit if just ultimately at the end of the day, he's a left guard. That's where we're going to keep him and we're not going to play him anywhere else. So I think that's possible. I think it is possible that maybe he just can't totally cut it at the NFL level as a tackle. And maybe you don't even mess with center. So, his value could be diminished a little bit if that ends up being the case. But I do think he ultimately will have some versatility and you can move him around as needed. His ceiling as a guard is probably much higher than his ceiling as a tackle. But the fact that you can kick him to tackle and I think he can be an average tackle still gives him more value than just your normal guard as well. As far as scheme fit, I do believe he is best as a left guard. He would fit fantastically in Green Bay's system. I have no concerns about that. And we know Green Bay will absolutely love his versatility. As far as a ceiling goes, I think his ceiling is Zach Martin / Rashawn Slater-ish, meaning really, 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 really good left guard when it comes to Zach Martin. We've seen Martin, obviously Slater, play some tackle as well. And I think that's the type of potential and versatility that he could have. The floor, I'm going to use another Packer for this one. I think Darren College. I think Darren College is probably his floor. Maybe he doesn't become quite as physical. Maybe the technical stuff doesn't carry over quite as well. If that's the case, I think he becomes a Darren College where he's a starting guard that can maybe kick the tackle in a pinch, but he just doesn't end up being all that good. And, College had some good seasons. He had some bad seasons, but he's just probably up and down. I think that if your floor as a player is a former starting left guard in the NFL for a period, like a distinct period of time, a significant period of time, that's a pretty decent floor. I just don't see a scenario where Skoronski is a total bust. Now, if you spend a top 15 pick on him and he becomes Darren College, that is a level of a bust, no question about it. But as far as floors go, like at worst case scenario, he's like a decent, slightly below average left guard as like a worst case scenario. So the floor is still relatively high, all things considered. And as far as a comp goes, I think he's a slightly worse Rashawn Slater, meaning that when Slater came out, we thought, will he be a guard? Will he be a tackle? I think Slater was just overall a better player. I think he was better as a tackle. I think he could, would be better as a guard as well. But I think they're very, very close. And it wouldn't shock me if Skoronski got to that level either. And like I said, I think he can become as a ceiling, as a high end point, and the next Zach Martin or the next Rashawn Slater. I think that is legitimately within his capabilities of doing so. But I would say it's more likely he becomes, like I said, a slightly worse version of Rashawn Slater. What he would bring to Green Bay, tremendous versatility, and we know how much Green Bay values that. I think you would get a decade-long offensive lineman. I think he's going to play a long time in this league. I think you would get a potentially dominant interior guard. I think it would potentially give you the ability to move Elton Jenkins to center. And it would give you a very fun possibility of David Bakhtiari at left tackle, Skoronski at left guard, Jenkins at center, John Runyon Jr. at right guard, and then you've got a right tackle competition that is Yosh Nijman and Zach Tom, and may the best man win for the starting spot to begin the season. It would give you Zach Tom as a ultimate, let's just say Yosh Nijman starts. You have Zach Tom as an ultimate 5-player, positionless player that can come in off the bench and play any of your 5 positions. And then you would also have Josh Myers as a backup who can play center, guard, right or left guard, center, right guard. You would also have, you would have a variety. Royce Newman can play guard and tackle. And now all of a sudden, you've got Skoronski who could potentially play 5 positions, Jenkins who could potentially play 5 positions, Zach Tom who could potentially play 5 positions. It's just going to give you, and like I said, Royce Newman's got versatility. Josh Myers has versatility. Runyon can play left or right. Nijman can play left tackle or right tackle. Like, it's just going to give you so many different options. And as you go into next season, into 2024, let's say they move on from Bakhtiari due to his contract, or maybe he has an injury setback. Let's say Yosh Nijman moves on in free agency next year. Well, now you have Skoronski, Jenkins, and Zach Tom, who you can move in a variety of different ways. You could, put Skoronski at left tackle, Zach Tom at right tackle. You could put Tom at left tackle, Skoronski at right tackle. You could use Elton Jenkins at left tackle, Skoronski at right tackle. Maybe Zach Tom's inside. Like, you could do so many different things. Even if you lose Yosh, and even if you lose David Bakhtiari next season in 2024, you still have a ton of options where you can move these players. And you could theoretically have like a Zach Tom left tackle, Elton Jenkins left guard, Josh Myers center, John Runyon Jr. right guard, and Peter Skoronski right tackle. Like, even without your 2 top starters, you still have a starting caliber 5 in 2024 just with the guys that you have on your roster. And like I said, with that versatility, move Tom, Jenkins, Skoronski around wherever you fit them best, and it's just going to give that entire offensive line crew a lot of versatility and a lot of options both this year and next year. And this year, I think Bakhtiari, Skoronski, Jenkins on the left side of the line could theoretically be the best left side of an offensive line in all of football. Is the value there at pick 15? Absolutely, unquestionably so. Now, Green Bay, whether they would do it or not, might depend if they think he can legitimately be a tackle. If they say, hey, this is a guard only, we know Green Bay values premium positions at that spot in the draft. So if they think he is just a guard, then at that point, maybe Green Bay would say, even if he lasts to pick 15, they might say, you know what, we're going to go in a different direction. We'd rather have a premium position player. If they value him as a multi-position offensive lineman that can play all 5 spots, like I think he can, I think he would absolutely be in play at 15. I think the harder thing might be the fact that will he actually be there at pick 15? But if he is, could easily see him be in play for Green Bay with all of that offensive line versatility that it would give them. That is going to do it for me today. Appreciate you joining me for a breakdown of Peter Skoronski. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. A huge thank you to Mint Mobile for partnering with me on today's show. I will see you guys right back here tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.